Hi everyone, it's Lexi and welcome back to another episode of The 20 Effect. I am so happy that you're here because I have a very special guest. Amanda Silvas, I've known her for a couple years now. We were actually introduced through a mutual friend and then also her husband, James Silvas. He was my kind of mindset coach that my team worked with in high school, and then also had the opportunity to work with him in college. I used to babysit for the Silvases, and I feel like they've just poured so much into my life, especially Amanda, throughout the time when I was babysitting for her kids. We just had so many conversations. I was navigating my life post-grad, graduating college, and kind of entering adulthood, and I feel like she was just able to like pour into me in that way. I don't even know if she like knew it at the time, but just a huge influence on my life and my life during that time. And I feel like I reference a lot of the things that her and James have kind of poured into me over the years. But I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. She's an incredible woman. I'll let her talk about herself a little bit and all that she does and all that she's accomplished and is paving the way for things right now. But please help me welcome Amanda Silvas to the pod.
I'm already starting with watery eyes.
Oh, stop.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
And even with the distance, like your energy, your sweetness, I still feel it.
Now I'm going to get watery eyes. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on and connect with you and your audience. I'm incredibly honored, and I love that you do this still. I remember a few years ago when you put this together, and I was like, that is just a beautiful evolution of what you're working on and the things that you want to do and how you want to make an impact and how you want to help other women navigating their 20s. I was like, oh, where was the resource for me when I was in my 20s? I don't know. Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. And so I think it's beautiful that you're pouring back into people's lives and helping them too through this.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what it's all about. Is I remember just like entering that season, and the more people I talked to, the more people were like, no, there's like actually no right way to like go about it, but like here's like there's resources to help. But I still felt like they were very limited, or like they wouldn't be, certain like topics wouldn't be talked about and kind of like brushed under the rug. And I think with social media, a lot of times we show social media that like we're fine and like we're navigating this well. But the more that you talk to people, the more it's like your 20s are actually really, really hard. But no one's really saying those things because no one kind of wants to admit to like the failure or the faults that you're kind of going through or the struggles. And also it's not fun to show those things on social media or to the world. It's kind of like a hit to the ego a little bit, but just wanted to create a space where we can talk about those things. But thank you for coming on. Do you kind of just want to tell people a little bit about yourself, your story, and then what you're kind of doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not in my 20s. I'm in my 30s. However, there's just like a part of you as you age, like you just never feel the age that you're at. And also then there's like this maturity of like, wait, but I'm not like 21 by any means, but I still feel very much like this late 20s Amanda self in a way. But I'm 36 now. I have 2 little boys. Aiden is 5, Oakley is 3. I am in graduate school getting my master's in couples and family therapy. I've run a business with my husband for the last 12 years. We have a mental performance coaching and speaking business where we work with athletes, individuals, companies, and instilling culture and different dynamics. And we used to do events pre-COVID. Now we like do retreats and stuff like that. So we do a little bit more deep dive kind of thing. And so a lot of what I do professionally bleeds and overlaps with my dynamic with my husband. And so like there's been all of those where I wear a lot of hats. I might be CFO one day managing bookkeeping and dynamics and doing billing and contracts, so like more operations. And then I might be actually coaching an individual or doing some sort of team dynamic. Or then I might be doing a podcast with James and editing that. Or I might be his wife in that moment. or mom in another moment. And so I navigate a lot of different hats alongside my partner. I'm very blessed to do that because I know not everyone can work well with their partner. Some people are like, I need my own separate thing, but we really work really well off that. We vibe off of each other in that way. I love doing couples things and working with couples. We have a podcast as well, Be That 1%. We've had it for like 8 years. It's top 1% globally now. So it's
That's
been
so
really
cool.
cool. Yeah, to see that evolution of helping people step into their own 1% and what is your own niche and thing that makes you authentically you. And so it's not like a 1% like financially, but it's what is it that you want to do in life, and don't settle for anything less than that. Figure out a way, find a way, when most people would just maybe settle or feel like they can't persevere the struggles or adversity. Like, you're staying the course, you're doing the thing. Yeah, it sucks and it's really hard, but you're doing the pain now for the reward later. And so that's being that 1%. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different roles. I'm also a student therapist at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas's clinic, and then also Las Vegas therapy as well. So like I said, there's a lot of different titles that I do, but it's all centered around mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the coolest thing about you guys is that you do wear so many different hats. And I think the older like I get and the more into the world I get, the more that I see that that's actually the norm. Like I think a lot of times we grow up and people ask us like in first grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think we have that mindset of like we have to be that one thing for the rest of our lives. And for some cases, like maybe that's true. Like if you're going to spend all this money going to law school or going to go be a doctor, like it makes sense for you to be a doctor for the rest of your life or a lawyer. But the more that I like see that, I know so many people that aren't using like the degree they got in college and they're in a completely different like career field. And I think that's really cool is that the world has allowed us to kind of wear different hats and work different jobs and do and experience different things throughout our lifetime. I think everything growing up, I think the world was maybe a little more black and white, where actually like we're living in a lot of the gray area. A lot of the time I think that's adulthood. Most of the time is kind of living in that gray area, and especially in your 20s. So that's really cool that you guys are able to do all those things and kind of speak to that too.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's like this evolution around what careers look like too and what they can be. And it doesn't need to be the same thing 9 to 5 and that you're doing the same thing. And I don't know about you, but I can't do the same thing every day all the time. I would go
Yeah.
bananas. I love the variety piece and that I can piece together my days and my weeks and wear different hats. And then being present in that hat that I'm wearing too, and being able to minimize the noise of all of the other things happening or that might need to happen on the list and the this and what's waiting for me after that hour of whatever it might be. But I like the switching gears,
Yeah.
and that my title doesn't need to be this one title all the time. I can wear different hats. And for me, that's fulfilling. I like
Yeah.
that piece.
For
Yeah.
sure. I think it keeps life exciting too. But so I kind of wanted to jump into what Amanda and I wanted to talk about. It's actually really cool. I was going back through my notebook of when I first started this podcast, and I had written down a list of people that I wanted to have on, and your name was one of them. And so when Amanda had reached out to me, kind of like bringing this topic that she had and the kind of this research that she was doing in like grad school and stuff, I was like, this is so perfect for the podcast, but also I've been wanting to have you on for since the beginning. And so how cool that I totally forgot that I had written your name down. And so how cool that it's finally like all coming together and not even realizing it. But kind of jumping in, one, I kind of want to ask you like what I was obviously kind of like a part of your journey when you were first like thinking about grad school and like applying and all those things. What kind of inspired you to want to go back to school and want to go to grad school?
I think I'm just crazy for wanting to do it when I was like 9 months pregnant with my second child.
Yeah.
I don't know what was wrong with me. I think because I was pregnant with my second child and kind of took this little sabbatical time for myself, it allowed me to see where the gaps were in my knowledge and where the gaps were in my ability to help people. So, me going to school to pursue a master's to get even more knowledge was honestly so that I could serve and support the clients that I was working with at a deeper level. I've had over 1,000 women do my self-love challenges, events, coaching, that kind of all encompassing around like self-love and what I was doing at the time. And I noticed this common theme, especially when I would work with people more in person or one-on-one or in small groups. People were having, yes, you might have this goal that you come to me to achieve for yourself around self-esteem, self-worth, stepping more into what it is that you want in your life and your business. However, there was always something, some attachment wound, some childhood trauma, or even trauma in general that was starting to emerge in the insecurities and in the mindset, in the dialogue, in the stories that were developed. And I didn't have that skill set at the time. And at the time I was in 27, 28, when I was really doing the deep dive work, and really starting to see this theme come up. And a lot of people I worked with were going and seeing a therapist too. And I was like, okay, so take what we're talking about, talk about that in your therapy session. Okay, great. And then I'd say, did you guys get to talk about that? Okay, great. And so I was like balancing it with other mental health professionals that my clients were also seeing. And then some weren't seeing anybody at all. And so I almost felt like I was doing a disservice with not having more tools in my tool belt. Yeah. So, and I kind of took this little sabbatical time when I was pregnant, which being pregnant, that's just a whirlwind in and of itself. For me, I had like so much brain fog, and my ability to like articulate points and connect pieces was really rocky my first pregnancy. And then I knew my second pregnancy, when that was happening again, I was like, okay, I need to take a pause here because I'm not showing up as my best in events or coaching and things like that. And so with that pause, like I was saying, it allowed me some time to reflect and start going down the rabbit hole. And mind you, I have to say and preface that I was in the Brene Brown rabbit hole at the time. Like, love me, Brene Brown, her books, The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, all her TED Talks, And so I saw that like, okay, so she's doing this research. She's a social worker. Looked into that. I was like, no, don't want to do social work. Okay, counseling, maybe therapy. Okay. Oh, shoot, in order to get my license as a therapist and get this skill set, I have to have a master's degree in one of these three things. And I was like, it was either social work, counseling, or / therapy, or like psychology base. Mm-hmm. So then I went down the rabbit hole of looking at programs because I was just like, get me out of college when I was in my 20s. I graduated with kinesiology, thought maybe I was going to do sports psych or something. And then I was about to change gears, and a professor of mine was like, just get out. So the last thing in my mind was that I was going to go back to school over a decade later. Yeah. And then I like let that marinate and talked about it with my husband, who James was like, why do you need this to do all of these things? Why not just educate yourself and train yourself? And I was like, I know me and I need structure. And if I'm going to do this, might as well get that like full licensure to be able to do that. And that would unlock a whole nother door. And then I talked to other people in academia and mentors and things like that before making my decision. But yeah, I was applying to grad school when I was like 9 months pregnant. I was taking my first classes when my baby was, I don't know, that's when you stepped in to help, really. Mm-hmm. Aiden was 2.5 and I had just had Oakley, and I was going to school in the afternoons and taking one-off courses and things like that before I fully jumped in. But that's a whole nother talk in and of itself. But honestly, to answer your question in a short, was because there was a gap in my knowledge and my skill set that if I wanted to do deeper, meaningful work, that I needed to be able to fill.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you were like bold enough to like step out and just go for it too. I think sometimes like going back to school is like this daunting task or like this really like scary thing. And the fact that you were like, I'm just gonna start by taking classes and then apply and get in, and now you're like almost graduated, which is so crazy to think. I was like working for you guys, like the start of your grad school journey is really cool, and it's been really cool to watch like your process throughout all of that and all that you've learned and all that you've gained. But so I kind of want to jump into this research project that you're doing and that you kind of talked to me about. I think it's so cool and definitely something that like relates heavily to me, but also women in their like mid to late 20s. So do you kind of want to talk about that, talk about how that kind of started, everything like that?
Yeah. So what you're referencing is I have a thesis that I'm doing for my graduation project. And there's a few different tracks people could do. But again, I'm crazy and decided to do this massive thesis that people do when they're getting their doctorates, except it's called a dissertation and it's the same thing. But I'm in a sense, have become this little scientist researcher, which that I feel like imposter syndrome, even in of itself, and conducting and doing interviews with people, it just feels a little surreal. But I'm doing my research on women in their 20s as it relates to self-esteem development. It feels like a natural evolution as I talk about what led me into grad school and the work that I was doing, because it was all centered around self-love. It was all centered around self-worth and building one's self-esteem, the way in which we view ourselves, right? How you scale when anytime like you're taking like a survey, it's like rank from a scale of 1 to 10, your self-esteem. What they're asking is like, how comfortable do you feel in your own body? What do you think about yourself? Is it more positive or is it more negative? And so those are really the schemas or the lens in which we view the world and we operate in the world, in which we are in relationship to one another, in which we show up with in a state of confidence or not, and I think our 20s are the most dynamic decade of our lives. Yeah. Granted, I'm only in my mid 30s, but and I've taken so many different developmental courses and lifespan things and whatnot, that if we look at each decade in and of itself, yes, there's a lot that goes on in childhood and adolescence, but 20 in and of itself, like you're differentiating from your family. Like you're stepping out there and you're becoming your own person, and you're challenging your beliefs and your values. You're coming into yourself. Your prefrontal lobe of your brain is fully becoming developed, and you're really starting to come into this state of awareness and understand who you are at a deeper level. Most of us, that's a life journey. And then you're starting a career. Some people are family planning and building that. Like you're meeting a partner. You're maybe buying a home. Maybe you're really making some serious money for the first time. So there's so many things. If you can picture yourself at age 20 to 28, like those are totally two different things. But what makes me so mad, which is why I'm doing the work I'm doing, is because we look at the literature and academics, especially around self-esteem, and it just chunks that decade into one big span. And like it needs to be broken down because so much is happening. Yeah. And I don't think if you're just saying a woman in her 20s, okay, one, where does she live? Okay, yeah. How old is she? What's going on in her life? Okay, you're having women scale themselves on all these different surveys and check a box to what most likely fits them without hearing lived experiences. And so when I was deep diving into this, I was getting flustered. I was getting angry. I was like, I never felt like any of my answers ever fit into a box, or that it totally encompassed who I am and what I'm experiencing. So I wanted to kind of turn what's existed in literature upside down and take the little bit of it, be my own Brene Brown, so to speak. I mean,
Yeah.
she researches like shame and courage and vulnerability and
Hmm.
does a lot of what we call qualitative. So you're having conversations like this and interviewing people and hearing their lived experiences, and then you're trying to create themes that are emerging from the data, they call it, or the
Hmm.
stories being told, and just are trying to see these common themes. And so, what I'm wanting to do with my research is actually hear the lived experiences of young women navigating their later 20s. Right now, if we were to kind of take a marker and graph, we're going back, back in time when we're in school and you're like dotting your data points and you're making your
Yeah.
little graph. The current research is showing that like self-esteem starts to increase like around 18 and really starts to almost like rise from the ashes in our early 20s, and continues to increase through the mid 20s, but starts to plateau at like 28, 29 right before 30 hits. And so I was like, what's going on in this later part of our 20s to where self-esteem is showing that it's decreasing? And is it decreasing really?
Hmm.
You know, there's not a lot post COVID, and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of different social, political movements, especially in the US and worldwide, granted, too. AI, social media, our accessibility to different things, the way in which we're living our lives and having careers, like, and family planning, all of that is changing.
Hmm.
We have more women enrolled in universities than ever before.
Yeah.
Women are having careers and becoming more financially secure to where if I want a partner, great, but I don't need a partner to be able to create these things for myself. So, how is that impacting someone's self esteem? How is that
Mm.
impacting dating? How is that impacting family and
Yeah.
overall life cycle things? So, for me, I personally think this this little scale that they're showing and the graph is inaccurate.
Yeah.
And I kind of am trying to disprove what's there by talking to the modern woman today. Because I honestly think that in our later 20s, if anything, that's when our self esteem is starting to get better. We're starting
Mm.
to know ourselves a little bit better. We've been through some things. Yeah, we
Yeah.
might question here and there, but at the core, I don't think that it's starting to decline at 30. I feel like 30 is like not where 30 was a few decades ago
Yeah.
by any
For
means.
sure.
So that's a little bit, there's a lot of places we could go as far as the self esteem literature, what's being said. We can talk about self esteem as a whole.
Yeah.
We could talk a little bit more about the research I'm doing and how people can be a part of that maybe towards the end.
Hmm.
But I think if we want to talk about self esteem in our 20s,
Yeah.
and how do we get more self esteem? And what are the self esteem struggles, the self worth things, and the body image? And as we look in the mirror, all the different things that come up for someone and normalize it, you know,
Yeah.
the self talk, the language, all of the things.
Yeah. I think like I just think back to when I was 21, like early 20s. I thought I was invincible, and maybe I lacked like maybe it was ego, I'm not quite sure, but I felt like I could conquer the world and was so confident in myself. And then I feel like turning 25, obviously making a big move, starting kind of my what I would call my career, graduating with my master's, like I've never questioned myself more. I've never like doubted myself more. Where like that wasn't a thing when I was 21. I mean, maybe, but looking back, I'm like, wow, I thought I had it all together. And then I think when you kind of step into the real world after graduating college, you're kind of hit with this new reality. And I think that maybe, and you can speak on this, that maybe takes a toll on your self esteem a little bit. I remember that was a very like humbling point for me in my life, and I'm grateful for it. But I think that was kind of a moment where I was like, okay, maybe I'm not as confident in myself as I once was. So yeah, where do you think that kind of shift happens? Like what do you think kind of impacts that plateau that you've been talking about?
Well, and if we go off of your lived experience right now, right? And if somebody else is feeling that way too, of like, geez, like, when I was just graduating, maybe my undergrad, I felt way more sure of myself than maybe I do now, right? Because there's a level of naivety there, and maybe the higher form of self-esteem that you were experiencing was based on your metrics were being based on something different than the way in which you measure it now, and what you use to weigh it against other things. Maybe there's like secure self-esteem, and then there's insecure self-esteem. And if you were looked at where you were at that time in your life, it was like, hey, I just did all the check marks. Look at me go. I graduated high school. I had this GPA. Look at me. I did the dance team, and I did, and I graduated with it in this many years, and I had this GPA. Woo, and you're checking off all these boxes of the things that you're supposed to be doing with your life.
Yeah.
And then you transition into the real world, and it's a little bit of a culture shock in a way.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit lonely too, because people are starting to figure out careers and navigate it. And especially if you didn't use your degree, you're kind of in this like soul searching season a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe what we see as this peak actually goes into a dip and then maybe a rise again. It's not there, again, just this like gradual rise through the 20s. I think it's these like peaks and valleys constantly because we're always climbing the next journey, or the next mountain, and trying to figure all of those things out. But I think that early 20s is we really are ticking the box of what we thought we were supposed to be doing at this point. For your whole life, for that most part, from like age 5 to 21, 22, you're in academia for a lot of that. That's a huge chunk of time to where that's how you were molded and shaped.
Yeah.
And then you're done, and now you're like entering the workforce in some way, or figuring out what you want to do. And it's like, I don't know. Now I have to sit here and think for myself.
Yeah.
I thought I was thinking for myself, but actually I was taking all the courses and doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing, or someone told me I was supposed to do, or that I felt I should be doing. So there's a level of what we call differentiation of you're creating your own path for yourself. And you're starting to separate from your parents.
Yeah.
There's not this hand holding as much. And so maybe there was a little bit of a shake to someone's system that made them start to question a lot of things. But also, just because you're questioning something doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Like, there's so much power in the self-reflection. There's so much power in being in that low part. And there's so much power in that self-reflection piece too.
Yeah.
That soul searching season, whenever I felt it come, because it comes time and time again, I'm like, ooh, okay, something's going to get good, because like I'm feeling maybe a little lost. I'm feeling a little unsure. Like, and then I go to start like creating again and trying to mold and figure out what it is that I want to do next or step into next. So I feel like maybe that time period was contextual on the things that were happening in your life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say this because it's my husband, but you had a really good mental performance coach when you were in college, you know.
I had a great one. I use his stuff all the time.
Yeah. And so when you don't have that accessibility, when he's coming every month and doing all the things for a few years at a time, and then you're like off on your own, you're like, shoot.
Yeah.
Like you have to generate that for yourself and listen to things. And, that proximity really is power in that sense of what we're surrounding ourselves with, what we're listening to, what we're reading. So if it wasn't as easily accessible, of course, you're going to start taking a decline to what you felt maybe your self-esteem or your confidence was. And then maybe you found your thing again when you went to grad school and you got this position in a dance program. You're like, okay, yeah, cool. I feel like I'm figuring this out and I got a purpose and I've got my plan now. And then that ended. Okay, shit. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, and people are looking to you in this new role that you're in. So many athletes, young athletes are looking to you and your coworkers are looking to you. And it takes a lot of work to find your own voice in a leadership position.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to look within and be like, do I know enough? You know, and start to question ourselves too. There's so much contextual factors. And that's why I think everybody's lived experience can't fit into just a check the box, rank yourself from a scale of 1 to 10. And it changes weekly, daily. You know, there's so many influencing factors there.
No, absolutely. I love what you talked about with like checking the boxes, because I feel like that's so true. Like we grow up with like this structure of like, okay, this is what you do next, and then this is what you do next. And then suddenly it's not about checking boxes anymore. Sometimes it's about like, all right, there's a bucket of sticks and you pull one out and like that's what you do next or whatever it is. Or sometimes life just like surprises us and uproots us in different ways. And I think like you were kind of saying, I think leading, I was joking about this with my athletes the other day of like, sometimes I feel like I'm just a girl still, like I'm just a kid, but I'm like not, but I feel like I am, but I'm expected to lead a group of like college students and like run a trip to March Madness full of college students and like be in charge, when internally I'm like, but I still feel like I'm just like a kid and I'm still learning and I'm still growing and I don't have it all together, but I feel like in this moment I need to. But I think good old Amanda Gaines, love her. I know that James works with her too, and the University of Minnesota dance team. But I heard her on this podcast episode, and she had this kind of saying of like, she became a better coach when she started inviting her athletes into like her coaching journey and showing them that like she doesn't have to be perfect and she's not going to be perfect and she's not going to have it all together. And I think that has really impacted me. And I think that translates over to life is like the more, and kind of the whole purpose for this podcast is like the more that we can invite people into our own personal journey and like be vulnerable and real and honest about those things, like the more relatable we are, the more that we can like connect as humans. I think vulnerability allows us to connect as humans. And so I love that you kind of like touched on that without even meaning to. It just kind of made me think of like where I'm at. But I think kind of going off that, like, where does self-esteem kind of come from?
Oh, now we're going back to like the 1800s. I don't quote me on this, but I feel like it was like the mid 1800s or 1890s when self-esteem really first started to emerge in literature, when there was a book written on it. But if we're looking at where self-esteem comes from, it's this evolution of the consciousness of humans. And that's more like evolutionary based. So where you've got your survival mode that kicks in, right? Like more of that dorsal reptilian brain. And then as humans have evolved from a state of like fight or flight and just survival, now we're more evolved and we are more logic-based thinking. We don't necessarily need to be in a state of fight or flight anymore, or survival anymore. And so there's this level of consciousness of the I am, starting to emerge. And that's where that self-esteem is really created, is the way you connect to yourself as an I. And the word I, not the I you see out of, but, or the word I, the letter I guess you could say. So every person that can see themselves as a I am has a level of consciousness and a self-esteem attached to that. There's no way around it. I don't know all the science about how we have evolved from the early primitive days until now. But the self-esteem aspect is something that none of us will ever be able to get away from, because we are humans and we have a state of consciousness and awareness about who we are. We all have thought, unconscious thought and conscious thought, right? And we all have things where we call in academia automatic thoughts and cognitive distortions and biases and schemas and beliefs and values. All of those things are impacting who we are every single day and how we show up and what we believe to be true and how we need to be and exist in the world. So we talk about perfectionism, which is something I don't think you ever get away from if that's something that's been instilled in you, in your work ethic, in your being ethic, right? Like, I would have to say and argue that any person that goes and gets higher education has some sort of perfectionism piece. They want to achieve. If you're in grad school or getting a doctorate, like, you want to achieve at a high level and get all the good grades and and it needs to be perfect, and I can't release this thing because of that. And there's so much of it. Mm-hmm. And I love the piece that you talked about, Amanda Gaines, of her like sharing this vulnerability of, I don't need to be the end all, know all, be all for this team or this program that I'm leading. That for some reason now the whole US and maybe part world is starting to look at as like the status quo. And that's a lot of pressure. Yeah. That's a lot. Right. And in this world of perfect posts, when shit's really falling apart behind the scenes, I can't stand it when a couple's like, we love each other, and then you really know them and you're like, what the fuck? Can you just be real?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're so craving that level of authenticity and that genuineness. And when we receive it, we're so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And so if we put ourselves in the shoes of like our athletes or the people that we lead, or even my own kids, I lead my kids every day. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's okay that I get down on my knees and I come to their level and I say, you know, I'm so in repair for something I did that wasn't right. Mm. That's like a new level of parenting too. Yeah. You know? And so like, I'm, as a parent, instilling certain self-worth beliefs in my own kids by the way that I show up as a parent, by the way that I do my own inner work on my own self-esteem and what certain things to me and what projections come up, what thoughts come up, because those thoughts come up, especially for you, of like, oh my God, I'm a kid. And you're like, wait a second. I'm not a kid. Yeah. I'm a grown woman. Have a master's degree. I have a job at a highly sought out university. Mm-hmm. Like, I know my shit. There's a moment where we all feel that, but it's, what do you do in those moments? Yeah. You know, a lot of people use like anxiety or depression or these spirals or whatever they might be. I get them all the time with the clients that I work with, of these like spirals and these vortexes, and I can't get out of them, and my thoughts consume me, and whatever it might be. The spirals are what people call them right now. But it's our level to pause and get ourselves out of it by the way that we talk to ourselves is so important. And I think that proximity piece is powerful, how we see ourselves in relation to others, really seeing our own greatness. There's so many times in this program that I'm like, these people I'm surrounded by are brilliant. Like, there's some people I'm like, they are so beyond their years and they don't even know it. Most of the people in my program are in their 20s. There's like a few outliers that are in their 30s and 40s, and some have kids and families. But for the most part, they're in their 20s. And I'm like, damn, if I was here in my 20s, like, I could be so far ahead, you know, whatever it might be, right? And then they're dealing with their own complex of like, my God, there's people in their 30s and 40s in this program, and who am I? I'm just this young person. What do I know? So it's all over the spectrum. It's all what we tell ourselves and how we see and position ourselves in proximity to others. But as far as like that, where does self-esteem come from? It really is the development of our consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of going off that, what role do you think like validation plays in self-esteem? Obviously, I know like you've read books and I've read books and we've talked about it. I know James talks a lot about it in his coaching stuff, but there's external like validation and then there's internal validation, and kind of like those external factors that influence us and then the internal even for like motivation, but specifically self-esteem. How do you think those kind of play into our self-esteem?
Well, you need both, right?
Yeah.
You can't, but that's where it's the insecure esteem. It almost like, I would say it's like the insecure high self-esteem is the most fragile
Yeah.
because when we notice we need other people's permission, when we need attention, when we need awards and accolades, those are a really huge indicator that I am doing so much to get external validation. I'm looking outside of me, and maybe I might show up and rank my self esteem as high, or maybe even people think that my self esteem is high or my level of self confidence because the way I carry myself, but really it's so fragile. Like if you told me I sucked, like I would probably crumble and die, eh, figuratively speaking, like being alone in my room and just being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I think a lot of the times we see like people of confidence and it's like this very insecure, fragile state of confidence. It's not
Yeah.
very rooted to confidence, and you can see it by the things in which they're trying to possess. That goes as something as simple as like that social media, and like looking at your phone anytime you post and seeing how many likes does that get, how many comments, or is it whatever it might be. That's a very fragile state. That's like where the external validation is really coming from. However, we need that as confidence boosts. We need that to add to our arsenal in a sense to show, hey, yeah, I did accomplish this thing. Hey, yeah, I can do this. Hey, yeah, I did this podcast and people were really impacted by that. That feels good,
Yeah.
and getting back to, okay, what's my intention in this? Was my intention to get that external validation, or is my intention was because of other things that were more deeply rooted in my values kind of thing. So I think the external validation plays a huge important role when we're looking at our abilities and reminding ourselves of what we can do and what we can achieve. But carried to the extreme, just like anything, can really hinder us in the long run, because then we rely on it way too much. The internal validation piece is also really important. It stems into how we talk to ourselves, the story, the narrative in which we're telling ourselves every day. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, if you really do even look at yourself in the mirror, right? And having a genuine, honest conversation with yourself. And those things are really important for that, I would say, that connection with oneself,
Yeah.
of that feeling of true worth and this level of authenticity and connection with your true self. So the internal validation holds way more weight. And that's what I would call like a secure attachment with self-esteem.
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of going off that, like with self-talk and self like validation, I think it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. I know specifically like when James, I've done this twice with James now, of our team would circle up and everyone has to like go in the middle of the circle and say like a I am statement about themselves. And sometimes it's like easy for people. It's easy for them to go in and be like, I am beautiful, I am strong. But then for others, they like cannot get themselves to enter the circle and they cannot get themselves to like say something positive about themselves. How do we kind of like break that cycle for those people that like feel as though they can't say those things in the mirror. They can't look at themselves in the mirror and say like, you are beautiful.
Well, what's beautiful about this thing is you just said like a kind of a hack just now without even realizing it. Because it is really hard to say I am statements in a way that feels authentic and believable to a person. And honestly, so what she's talking about is my husband, especially with athletes and teams, he'll do this with sales teams too. He creates these like I am circles. And it's a moment where the person in the circle has this moment of growth. They step in and they're like shouting. It's like a very high energy state, shouting these affirmations of themselves of like, I am powerful, I am worthy. And then the team, the circle, the people in the actual circle are shouting back, you are worthy, you are powerful. And like every athlete, for the most part, gets to stand in the circle and do all the things. And so it's a huge growth moment for someone who really is self-conscious of like, they're thinking of like, what are people thinking of me while I'm in the circle? And also, what is it that I say? Because none of this feels authentic to me. So that them even standing in the circle is way more of a growth moment than anything of the athlete that stands in the circle and is like, I'm beautiful and can say that, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they're even in the circle is a huge moment of growth. And that's like a piece where it would be like self-reflecting of like, wow, I did that for myself. Not, I couldn't get to that level of saying something and shaming, but validating and acknowledging what I can do, what I did do in that moment, even that subtle shift. So I just worked with a client recently. This is a therapy client. And in the therapy room, we have a mirror. And so I had her say these I am statements to herself. And I didn't write them out and say copy, repeat. I asked her to share what was coming up. And I asked her on a level of 1 to 10, like how uncomfortable was that or how hard. And I think she gave like a level 3 of like that really sucked kind of thing. And then I had her change the language and said, you are. And you're looking in the mirror and you're looking at yourself and I'm saying, you are beautiful. You are worthy. You are powerful, blah, 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 blah. And I asked her, how uncomfortable was that? She was like a 6 or a 7. And so there was a level to where we can kind of dissociate the I and the you. And so I would say like a hack, honestly, for someone that's trying to step more into some positive self-talk and more empowering phrases. I wouldn't say powerful affirmations. I like the word more empowering phrases. Because sometimes it's like, I am this. I'm like, and your brain's like, no, I'm not. So, but if we start to say you are, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you say you versus I would say start there. Yeah. There's some sort of separation between the I language and the you language. That's like a small little subtle hack. Because if you can't be with yourself in the mirror for 1 minute, it's going to be very challenging to be with others for 1 minute. And that's why we create that space from others to really know like our true self and what we're really going through.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. So that's one thing I would say of like, how does someone start to move in that direction?
Yeah.
The other thing was something I just touched on earlier of like the level of acknowledgement. If someone can't stand in that circle and say positive affirmations about themselves, they've probably never been able to really acknowledge anything that they've done, because anything they've done they felt was probably not enough. And there's a level of belief of not enoughness. And then we got to look at, okay, where did that belief form? You know, and we got to look at their childhood. Yeah. We got to look at, you know, different factors there, who they were in school as they aged. There's so many factors into just being able to say an I am statement, to really peel back those layers of not feeling like they are enough. And where did that belief start to form? At what point in their lives do they even remember feeling like they weren't enough, or that like couldn't believe any sort of level of positivity about themselves? So there's a little bit more there, but I would have to say starting with some level of acknowledgement of yourself and what you've been able to do, even if it's like, I got out of the bed this morning and I really didn't want to. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I think that's been kind of the biggest thing in this season of life that I'm in is like celebrating the little wins. But also I've always like kind of resonated with this saying you can't like pour from an empty cup. And I think as someone who has to lead, and I know you can relate to this being a mom, but like has to stand and like lead people every single day. You kind of don't have days where you can't really have an empty cup. If you want to be able to like pour into your kids well, pour into your athletes well, pour into if you're a boss, like pour into your employees well. And so I think, yeah, kind of taking those things and making sure like our cup is full and that we are spending time taking care of ourselves and building up our self-esteem so that way we can pour into the people around us.
The pouring of the cup, right? This is also, I know we talk about self-care, or like maybe it's a buzz thing, but you know, self-care isn't like facials and massages. Sometimes it's not putting your phone in your room or even going on social media at night. Maybe it's turning the lights down low and knowing you've got a busy day the next day. And so you put your do not disturb on at like 9 p.m. and that phone goes away and you're starting to do things to get yourself ready for bed. Maybe self-care looks like journaling and reflecting from that day and like looking over your calendar for the next day. And that way, like your mind can be at rest and getting a full night's sleep and waking up earlier than your kids for me, which is like when people need something from me, especially when I'm seeing clients or I'm at school. That day started the night before and how I primed myself for that day. Yeah. You know, if you know, like there's a heavy day where you're doing one-on-ones with your athletes or you're going to be traveling, like the level of intentionality of how you show up as your best self really starts the night before on how you primed that evening piece and sleep. I think sleep is so freaking powerful and does not get enough credit. Also just cognitive function, brain health. Oh, there's so many things I'm so passionate about. You know, like eating actual protein in the morning and breakfast to get your metabolism going. And, you know, you need carbs, you need protein. Like those things are really important, and feeling hydrated with electrolytes, you know, instead of reaching for the coffee first thing. Like I know on my days that I do have heavier days, cognitive days, like I'm getting up earlier than the rest of the family when it's still dark out. I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm doing apple cider vinegar, water, honey, lemon to kind of cleanse out my system. I have electrolytes. I've got me my creatine supplements, my protein. Like there's so many things that I'm doing for my own brain health, physical health that isn't a facial of self-care, you know, and that's me filling myself up because the way we take care of ourselves through our nutrition and our sleep is what's going to help us be dialed with other people so that we can be present, so that we can be sharp, so that we can make decisions quickly. You know, like all of these things are a huge factor of like, what did I put in my body that day? You know, because if you didn't put anything in your body and you feel like shit and you ate fried food because it was just there or whatever it might be, like your level of patience when shit hits the fan or your level to deal with adversity when you're like already stressed and your immune system's stressed, your body's stressed because you didn't eat right that day or you're traveling and you don't get as much sleep, like all of those things compromise you showing up as your best self.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which impacts, of course, self-esteem and how we're showing up in that moment.
Yeah, and the people around you too. Like if you can't show up as your best self, like that's going to influence the people around you.
Well, it'll influence your story of being like either, see, I knew it, I couldn't do this, I suck. Or damn, I'm a badass. All right. What worked for me that day? Okay. But this is the level of which I play at because I am a mom. I am a wife. I run a business. I'm in grad school. I have coaching clients and I have therapy clients. And if I'm going to be in a therapy room with someone who's trusting with me some of the deepest parts of their life, I'm going to be present with you.
Yeah.
And I have to compartmentalize all these other moving pieces of my life and of myself to be able to be present with you, to emotionally regulate anything coming up. If you're talking to me about a traumatic event in your life, or we're unpacking some trauma, or we're going through certain things, like, so that I'm not projecting and then also getting emotional or whatever it might be, like, my ability to stay present, stay calm, emotionally regulate is so imperative. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm not taking care of myself and really putting myself first in that way. So, like, there is a level of being selfish that's so important, and setting those boundaries for what you say yes to and what you say no to. Because I just don't have, I don't want to be like, I don't have the time for anything else, but like, I really don't. And I think some people in my program, in my cohort, are like, okay, there's Amanda eating her healthy thing again, or, oh, there's Amanda doing her 10 squats after clients, because I know I'm sitting all day, and 10 squats is the equivalent of a 30-minute walk, and then I'm sharp, I'm ready. There's so many little things that I'm doing, because if you're going to think about it, if you're in therapy, let's say, or you're going to go see your doctor, like, you don't want to see someone that's like hungover from the night before, or like is half there, kind of not listening, and you know when someone's not listening to you.
Yeah.
So if like people are looking to you or looking to us, like, it's so important that we create that, they're boundaries, but they're also like these rules that are like very sacred to keep, you know? And that's not to say I don't have a margarita. I just don't have a margarita the day if I see clients the next day.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. So I kind of want to ask you, obviously, like, you have just gained so much knowledge, you're so knowledgeable, but what is kind of a piece of advice that you would give to Amanda in her 20s? Like, kind of maybe where I'm at right now. What's kind of something that you would maybe say to her?
How old are you again, Lexi?
26.
26. Okay. I was getting married at 26 to James, and I was checking off all the boxes, you know, because we're college sweethearts. And then after that, you know, then there was engaged, and we bought a house, and then we got married. And then it was like, oh my God, you did all the things. And we knew we didn't want kids for a while. I didn't have my son until I was 30. But there was a level that I went in after I got married, where then I was a wife. And that first year was fine because we were working on things. But then I realized I was too attached to his goals and wants and helping him achieve his things, that I was in, like, literally in one of the most heartache seasons of my life, around 28, 27 or 28. Because I was so fixated on him and attaching myself to his goals, his wants, his dreams, that I completely negated what I wanted. And it was a way, I noticed now looking back, to avoid sitting with the discomfort of that soul searching season period of my time. Because if you push it away and it gets discomfortable looking at it, because you just don't know where your next thing is for you, you know, personally, professionally, like, that's only going to come up again. Yeah. You push things down, you avoid it. Like, it might mask the symptoms for like 6 months, but it comes up time and time again.
Yeah, for sure.
My journey, I won't change it because it served a purpose for where I'm at today. But if I had to go back and talk to that younger Amanda, would have said, go take a trip by yourself. Go be in nature and meditate, journal, pray, listen, you know, to the things that are coming through, because those things are important. To have this time in silence to herself to see what could have been there. Yeah. Versus attaching myself to my husband's things and helping him build those things, because that was almost safer. Like, hey, we're doing this together, and we have done it together, and it was great. But what if I had my own thing in that moment from the get-go that complemented him?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's what I would have gone back and like said to my younger self in that moment. Yeah.
I think so too. Like being alone and being okay with being alone in like your 20s is also like very pivotal because like you said, if you don't deal with it, it's gonna show up later. Like with what you kind of talked about. If you don't learn how to be okay being by yourself and being alone or going and taking a trip by yourself, eventually something is going to come up where you are going to have to be alone and you are going to have to like be okay with yourself. And so I think you've spoken on like what a lot of people in their 20s deal with is it's like a lonely and isolating time. And so we can either like deal with it now or we're going to have to figure it out later. And so thank you for sharing that. And just thank you for everything that you've shared. Like, I literally felt like this was a mini like therapy session, like a little coaching session that I got because like you are just incredible and I miss our talks and I miss our chats. And so I'm so glad that we got to do it. But to kind of wrap up, kind of circling back to self-esteem, was kind of like the final thing that you want to tell like women in their mid to late 20s about self-esteem, maybe people like a woman in their 20s that's struggling with self-esteem, or honestly at any age, not just in their 20s, what's kind of a piece of advice that you would give them?
We are human beings, and as human beings, we are a connective species. We need each other, right? So when you're feeling lonely and isolated in your own beingness, realize you're not meant to be lonely and isolated in your own beingness, right? It's one thing to take a trip away for yourself to kind of recalibrate and have a moment to you. It's another thing entirely to isolate from other people. Your support system is incredibly imperative. Who you surround yourself with, authentic women that share the same values, that are just as hungry about life as you are, that can be there for you. I think our support system is invaluable because when we're not feeling it in that moment, that day, that month, we can almost like use that other person's energy. But that support, I think, doesn't get enough recognition because we see research has shown time and time again how much a support system helps in trauma, how much a support system helps in substance abuse, alcohol abuse, any sort of behavioral addiction or substance addiction, and how much it helps in anxiety, social anxiety, depression, anything you name it. Like that support system does not get enough credit. So if there is a time in your life or you're in it now where you're just not feeling like yourself.
Yeah.
And like you're questioning yourself a lot. Maybe you just don't feel like the energy the way in which you used to. Maybe you feel like you spiral in these anxiety pieces and sometimes that perpetuates into like anxiety attacks and you're wondering like if you're making the right choices and right decisions and you're just like feel like alone in some of it. I would say share your pain. Share some of these vulnerable pieces of you because we're connective people. Like we need each other. And that's a huge piece that we forget.
Yeah.
So build your support system. And it's not just like anybody gets to be in this. It's like people that share same values as you. And people that are doing things that maybe inspire you or motivate you, or you see them and you're just like, oh, I just love being around you. Your energy's great, because that girl, that woman, guy, whatever. I say women because I just think that we need to fill our tribe with amazing women all the time. I would say like really fill that tribe around you of at least three, if not one, but three amazing people that you can call on and have like vulnerability conversations with. Because they'll help you and they'll remind you of your greatness and then they'll check in on you and you'll do the same thing for them one day.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I absolutely love that. I think like moving, and I think I had such great community when I was in Arizona, and obviously I still have those people, but I'm excited to continue to find those people here in Texas. And it's hard for sure, but I think that's something I've just been praying on and kind of hoping for and trying to find. So it's encouraging to hear that it's like I need to keep like finding those people because it's so vital and it's so important. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much. I just love and appreciate you a ton. And I'm so glad that we got to do this and that we got to talk about this. And this is something I was needing, but I know a lot of my listeners are also going to need and also going to love. And I also kind of want to say, like, if you're not a woman who is in their mid to late 20s, like, you either know one or you will be one day. And so feel free to share this episode with them. And I think the more we can like learn about these things, the more we can kind of help people. And so, yeah. But I just appreciate you and all your wisdom that you've provided.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to follow along on my, grad life, mom life, therapy life journey, Instagram's probably the best way.
Yeah.
I am _ Amanda Silvas. And there will be like a link if anybody's interested in participating in the research that I'm doing. Yeah. I am looking actively recruiting for women ages 25 to 29, American cisgender women. So if that is something that speaks to you and you're in that demographic and you're interested, just take a peek. But it's anonymous. So I don't collect your name. Everything's unidentifiable. So even if you say someone's name or say a state or something that would maybe think someone might leak something back, it's like all completely anonymous and unidentifiable. So if anybody's interested in participating or sharing their lived experience and changing some of the existing literature to be up to date.
Yeah.
It's my biggest passion is like, let's update this,
yes.
With like what's actually going on. So if anybody's interested in having that little piece in history, then reach out to me.
Yeah. I'll include your Instagram and then the link in the show notes too. So that way people can go find it. But well, thank you, Amanda. You're awesome. And thank you so much to those of you who are watching and listening. For more content, make sure to check out the 20 Effect podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I just want you to remember that no matter what you're going through, we're in this together. Bye, y'all.